Right now,
Too soft a coverage.
you're sitting in a warm room, and you did absolutely nothing to create that warmth. It simply came to you. There is a coat hanging by your front door, and you never had to chase down or kill another living creature to earn the right to wear it. There is enough food waiting in your kitchen to last another week, no matter how brutally cold it becomes outside. Now, imagine that every one of those comforts suddenly disappears, and all that remains is your bare skin facing an unforgiving winter. A cold so relentless it could quietly steal your life while you slept, long before you ever had the chance to wake up. Now, meet Senna, a young woman who lived 26,000 years ago, in a world locked beneath ice. This is not simply another story about ancient humans. This is the night Senna almost didn't survive. Senna was born during the harshest chapter of the last ice age, roughly 26,000 to 19,000 years ago. Ice covered vast stretches of Europe, Asia, and North America. The landscape was frozen, flat, and almost barren. Trees were scarce. Vegetation vanished for months at a time. Food could simply disappear. And the human body was never designed to survive a world like that. Our ancestors came from warm, tropical landscapes, and our bodies still carry that ancient inheritance. We have no thick fur, no heavy layer of insulating blubber like a seal. We cannot slow our heartbeat and sleep through winter the way bears do. Every creature around Senna seemed perfectly built for the cold. Woolly mammoths carried dense fur and enormous fat reserves. Cave bears simply hibernated until spring returned. On paper, humans should have been the first species to disappear. But Senna possessed something no other animal did: a mind capable of planning, and hands capable of building what her body lacked. Everything began with fire. When archaeologists excavated Ice Age hearths in what is now Ukraine, they expected to find nothing more than simple piles of ash. Instead, they uncovered carefully engineered fireplaces. Some had burned at astonishing temperatures of more than 600 degrees Celsius, revealing a level of skill no one expected from people living so long ago. Then she learned how to carry warmth with her wherever she went. Humans had already been skinning bears for their fur at least 300,000 years before Senna was born. We know this because ancient bear foot bones still preserve the precise cut marks left behind when the hide was carefully removed. But simply draping an animal skin across your shoulders was never enough. Without something to seal the gaps, precious body heat escaped almost immediately into the freezing air. The solution turned out to be surprisingly small and almost laughably simple: the sewing needle. One scientist even called it the most important invention in human history. A needle allowed Senna to stitch clothing that actually fit her body, with tight seams and sleeves that sealed around her wrists. There is an enormous difference between draping an animal hide over your shoulders and wearing a properly tailored coat. In the Ice Age, that difference often meant the line between life and death. Before stepping out into the freezing air, Senna rubbed her face with tallow, rendered animal fat that sealed her skin against the relentless wind, and slowed the loss of precious body heat. Outside, another danger waited across the endless white landscape. One many people never think about: snow blindness. To protect themselves, northern hunters carved narrow slits into pieces of bone and tied them across their eyes. In essence, they had invented humanity's very first sunglasses, made entirely from bone. Most people imagine prehistoric humans hiding inside dark caves. The reality was even more impressive. Senna's people built their own homes out in the open, in what is now Ukraine and Russia, landscapes where trees were almost non-existent. So they used the one material that surrounded them: woolly mammoth bones. At a site called Majirik, archaeologists uncovered circular dwellings constructed almost entirely from the bones and tusks of these enormous animals. Senna's home even included a cold trap at its entrance. The doorway was built lower than the sleeping area because cold air is heavier. It settled near the entrance, while warm air naturally rose to where her family slept. They had discovered the basic principles of thermodynamics tens of thousands of years before anyone ever wrote them into a textbook. They also packed snow around the outside of their shelters, because snow, surprisingly, is one of nature's finest insulators. Senna was not fighting this battle alone. On the other side of the world, in what is now Siberia, hunters built homes from frozen earth and reindeer hides. Far to the south, at the southern tip of South America, the Yagan people wore almost no clothing at all, even in freezing coastal winds. To survive, the Yagan body worked differently from ours. Their metabolism generated far more internal heat, and they instinctively squatted to reduce the amount of body surface exposed to the freezing air. Their answer to winter was not a heavier coat. It was a body running at a higher level of energy. Meanwhile, in the far north, the Sami people learned to read snow almost like a language. They developed dozens of different words to describe different kinds of snow, some of which revealed whether the ground beneath was safe to cross or ready to collapse beneath your feet. 3 cultures, 3 completely different bodies of knowledge, 3 different solutions to exactly the same enemy. A winter that never offered easy answers. Now back to Senna. Staying warm was enough to keep her alive through the night. But winter had another killer, one that worked much more slowly: hunger. Sometimes months passed without a successful hunt, so whenever her tribe brought down a large animal, they did far more than simply eat it. They preserved it. They froze the meat in the natural cold. They smoked it over fires. They dried it into jerky. And they stored it inside deep pits beneath the frozen ground, creating food reserves that could carry them through the hardest months of the Ice Age. There is even evidence suggesting that Senna's people tied heavy stones to mammoth meat and sank it into icy ponds to preserve it for months, creating what was essentially a giant natural refrigerator. No electricity, no power outages, just the freezing world itself keeping their food fresh. Every part of the animal was used. Nothing was wasted. In a world where missing a single meal could become your last, waste simply did not exist. Hunting itself was never left to chance. Ice Age hunters used fire, careful planning, and flawless teamwork to drive entire herds of wild horses into natural traps. Archaeological evidence shows that some of these hunting grounds were used again and again for tens of thousands of years. That level of preparation is the reason Senna's family survived. They planned for winter long before winter arrived, turning every season into preparation for the next. In many ways, we, not they, are the ones most easily caught off guard by disaster. Survival also depended on something far simpler: each other. Many people slept together inside shelters far smaller than anything most of us would accept today, and that was entirely intentional. Human body heat is real heat. Every person helped warm the person beside them. Having an entire room to yourself was not a luxury. It made you colder, more vulnerable. When brutal winters arrived, those who faced the cold alone were often the first to fall. Centuries later, during the harshest winters of medieval Europe, farmers took this idea even further. They brought their cattle inside the ground floor of their homes. The animals generated enormous amounts of heat, which naturally rose to warm the family's living quarters above. In effect, they slept above their own central heating system, and that living furnace happened to be a cow. And now we come to the strangest chapter of Senna's story. Some scientists believe that her distant ancestors, whose remains were discovered at a site in Spain known as Cima de los Huesos, may have survived harsh winters by slowing their bodies into a state that resembled hibernation. For many years, the idea remained little more than a fascinating possibility. But more recent studies have taken a closer look at seasonal growth patterns preserved in ancient bones, and the evidence has become far more intriguing. Those ancient skeletons reveal periods when growth appeared to stop, then resume again in rhythms that closely matched the changing seasons, remarkably similar to patterns seen in animals capable of slowing their metabolism to survive extreme conditions. That does not mean these people slept for months like bears. It suggests something more subtle. Their bodies may have entered an extraordinary state of energy conservation. They ate less. They moved less. They waited patiently through the darkest, coldest weeks of winter until the world became livable again. So perhaps the strange stories passed down from our distant ancestors were never myths at all. They may have preserved one of humanity's oldest survival strategies. Do not fight winter with reckless desperation. Simply disappear from it until it passes. And eventually, winter did pass. Senna survived. Our ancestors survived. Life continued flowing from one generation to the next until, at last, the torch of survival was placed into your hands. In only a few thousand years, a heartbeat compared with the age of our species, we have gone from building homes out of mammoth bones to warming an entire house with the touch of a single button. The deadly enemy our ancestors feared has become little more than something we casually watch through the window of a heated car. Senna fought with everything she had just to see another spring. The least we can remember is this: the same resilient blood that carried her through the Ice Age is still flowing through your veins today.